thank all of you for coming tonight. I am so humbled.
Silence, please. Silence.
I love this outfit.
That worked. Welcome, everybody. I'm so humbled to have every single one of you here. Thank you. I think many of you know this story, but in November, I was living in New Orleans in a little studio apartment right off of the French Quarter, and I was meditating. And all of a sudden, this idea just beamed into me. Now I'll tell you, I've been meditating every day for about 4 years. I've heard of this sort of thing happening before. It had never happened to me before. And I had the idea that I wanted to start a psychedelic magazine. And the first thing I did was I got up off of my meditation pillow and I called Madison and I said, "Do you want to do this with me?" And she said, "Yes." So that's how Doubleblind began, and I don't think that we ever could have imagined that less than a year later that we would have built a community, not just around the magazine, but around this idea that there needs to be a place for meaningful storytelling, not just about psychedelics, but about psychedelic culture and psychedelic values. What does that mean? Psychedelics aren't just about psychedelics. They're a jumping off point to talk about all of the most important things that we're facing in our society now. So the depression epidemic, devastating. I know this is a really joyous room and I don't want to bring it down, but that's the reality, is that we're facing a really devastating mental health crisis, and that there are a lot of conditions that the Western medical community just flat out has not figured out how to treat. Flat out has not figured it out. Additionally, the climate. Hello. I mean, what's going on? It's devastating. And we all, as consumers, need to wake up to how the way in which we live our lives is contributing to the devastating degradation of the planet. So there's so many things that psychedelics can help us to explore and can help us to wake up to. So since starting Doubleblind, as I mentioned, there's been a community that's sort of popped up around it. The most beautiful, sincere, talented people have joined Madison and I to make this a reality. And a lot of them are in this room, not all of them, but we've got Alex here on video. We have Max here, built our website and is our tech guru. We have our ad sales team and head of partnerships. David Kelsey's here and Barry is somewhere. We have our fantastic, probably many of you know, our publicity team, Zoe and Mike, are freaking amazing. Could not have done this without them. And then there's other people too in New York. My best friend David Good, who literally, I probably shouldn't talk about this on the record, but here I go. I did mushrooms with David when we were sophomores in college, and we talked about how we wanted to start a magazine someday together. So the fact that he actually took all the articles and put them with art and put them in a magazine that people are picking up and going, wow, this is a magazine. This is really impressive. And then of course, like my just dream partner, Madison, many of you know her as well. I mean, an incredible journalist, so rigorous, so caring, fact checks every single quote and every single statistic. An incredible journalist. And then the last thing I want to say, I want to get into our panel because these incredible people have come to join us, is that Doubleblind isn't about Doubleblind at all. Doubleblind is one very small sliver of a massive movement that's spreading around the globe right now to wake up. Yeah. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies, which was founded in 1986 by Rick Doubleblind. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Bia Labace to my left. She's the founder of an incredible site, and they do events, they do all kinds of things, but it's called Shakruna, and she has really been a pioneer in diversifying the psychedelic field. So when we think about psychedelic history, we think about Timothy Leary and Ram Dass and Albert Hoffman and all of these white men who were, you know, very, very important in getting us to where we are now, but there are so many other voices that are being neglected in this conversation, from indigenous voices to people of color to queer people. Bia is totally a pioneer in bringing those people to the forefront and giving them a voice. So thank you so much for your work. And yeah, thanks again for being here. I hope that this is not just a networking event, but that this is really an opportunity for you to meet some really interesting people and make new connections and spark new ideas. So with that, we're gonna head on.
So Shelby and I met through Columbia Journalism School. So we're committed. Can everybody hear me? Louder.
Silence back there, please.
So Shelby and I met through Columbia Journalism School, and so our priority in founding Doubleblind is a commitment first and foremost to storytelling and investigative journalism, so giving a platform to underrepresented voices, artists, writers, and story subjects in the psychedelic space. When people think about psychedelics, they might think of the 60s, the hippie movement, Ram Dass, Timothy Leary, but really humanity has had a relationship with plants, psychedelic and otherwise, since the beginning of time, using them for medicinal and spiritual purposes. So today we're in the midst of what a lot of people are calling the psychedelic renaissance. We have researchers through MAPS, Johns Hopkins, NYU, and other institutions looking into pursuing FDA-approved research on MDMA, which is the main component of what you might know as ecstasy, or psilocybin, which is the main component in mushrooms. And by 2021, MDMA is slated to become a legal tool in psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy for post-traumatic stress disorder. Michael Pollan's book, maybe a lot of you have read it, How to Change Your Mind, is a New York Times bestseller. In May, Denver became the first major city to decriminalize psilocybin, and Oakland, just shortly thereafter, passed another measure decriminalizing all plants, so psychedelic and otherwise.
Wow.
Now California has a campaign to decriminalize psilocybin, which Ryan and others are going to talk about. And Oregon also might be voting to legalize psilocybin next year. This is also on the radar of federal legislators like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who introduced an amendment to ease up on psychedelic research recently.
Nice.
So, what I wrote about in the first issue of Doubleblind is how the psychedelic industry is about 5 to 10 years behind where cannabis is. So as the psychedelic industry takes off, whether through decriminalization measures and passing FDA-approved psychotherapy tools, we're going to have to ask a whole new set of questions about psychedelics that we weren't asking before. So what do we want the coming industry to look like? How can we ensure that it's affordable, accessible, and equitable? How can we honor ancient indigenous wisdom and tradition while also reconciling